Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another video. Today we're talking about the set 13 ban list, wish list, and predictions. So in today's video, we'll kind of go over a combination of what the community has been asking for in terms of being addressed in the ban list, as well as what I think will happen and what I would like to happen. So we'll go over that in today's video. We have gotten the TP reveals at the time of recording, so that means that the ban list announcement for set 13 should be right around the corner. Maybe the end of this week, maybe early next week, maybe late next week, something along those lines. I'm kind of thinking, but before that, I did want to get this video out to you guys. So if you're new here, definitely subscribe, hit that bell to miss a video. If you guys want to help support the channel, there are many links down in the description that will help do so. Particularly today, if you want to step your game up and support the channel, check out the Patreon down there, check out the articles I post there. You'll be able to see where my head's at competitively. That being said, let's jump right in. So a lot of stuff that the people have been asking for that I've noticed from the Facebook groups, right? The Dragon Ball Super community Facebook group. A lot of people have actually been asking for green to see some sort of hit on the ban list. And personally, I don't really agree with this. As far as like the competitive standings go and what's topping events and what's not topping events, green is easily the most lacking color. It's the color that's doing the least in terms of topping events. And we're not talking about Reboot Gohan, right? Reboot Gohan's not a pure green deck, right? When you look at like a green deck or a red deck or this or that type of deck, you're more so looking at the theme of the deck overall. You know, green in this game, hand control, field control. Reboot Gohan is just a degenerate aggro strategy that the leader could have been any color and it would still do the same thing, right? So just keeping that in mind. We're not talking about Reboot Gohan. Yes, Reboot Gohan does do well in best of 3 environments, but we're talking about more just like green as a whole, right? Like Turles started off set 12 doing some pretty cool stuff. I think even like a Clash Goku topped one of the events, I'm not mistaken, but besides that, there's been virtually no green in any top cuts. But I have seen a lot of people saying that green needs to be addressed in some way. Demigod Unison of Sorcery is a very powerful Unison. Why do people want this to be addressed? Well, it's the only Unison in the game that does what this Unison does, right? So it's a 1-drop Unison. Those are relatively tough to come by. And even if they are, like, you know, for instance, red has Piccolo Jr., yellow has a few 1-drop Unisons. But this one, it's almost impossible to remove its markers in most matchups, and that is because of the permanent. If you attack it, try to take a marker off of it, your opponent can take a life instead of losing that marker. And this is a really powerful card in green decks. Gives you access to turn 1 Frieza Charismatic Villain. That's a really powerful thing, especially against a lot of the aggro strategies like Red Broly. It is a really good effect, and it is a really hard Unison to kill. +1's great, plus 10,000, so it's a 15k attacker on turn 1. -3 is excellent, removing 2 battle cards, and a lot of times green players will use that opportunity to -3 Demigra and then go into another Unison just to kind of establish a better board state. But while this Unison is so powerful, again, I just kind of default to the same notion that green isn't really doing all that much right now. And you know what? I think personally for green, having a reliable turn 1 Unison that allows them to use Frieza Charismatic Villain is really good. If green, you know, maybe in set 13 or future sets became really broken and this Unison, you know, allowed you to get Frieza online turn 1, which made the deck even more powerful, that would probably be the fault of whatever engine the deck's playing. I really don't think this Unison in and of itself makes green absurdly broken. And yes, in Dragon Ball Super, like, generally when a strategy is really broken, it's not just due to one card. It's usually due to an amalgamation of really good cards. And green does have a lot of really good cards at its disposal. But again, I just point to the numbers. Look at how little green is doing in the meta right now. I don't really agree with a hit on this card. I think this card should stay. What's kind of interesting is that the Frieza Unison we're seeing for the chilled archetype coming out in set 13, that seems to be like it's almost a Unison that could replace Demigod Unison of Sorcery. Like it's a 1-drop Unison, has a worse ability to kind of keep itself in play, and it's honestly just worse overall. But I really don't think this is on Bandai's radar. I really don't think they'll hit it. I don't think it deserves to be hit. Just my opinions. But we'll move on to another green card. Talking about Dormant Potential Unleashed, yes, this card is absurdly powerful, and in some cases, it's outright stupid. Essentially, what you'll do with this card is, in a green deck, basically on a turn, you want to go tell your opponent to play in traffic. You basically use Dormant Potential Unleashed, you pitch a card so they get 1 more attack for the turn, and then typically you follow up with a blocker or another negate, and now all their attacks are spent. They can't really do much else. In a lot of ways, Dormant Potential Unleashed is almost like a 4 of Baby Hatch. Yes, they do get 1 attack through if you don't have a blocker to follow up the Dormant Potential Unleashed activation, but still, Dormant Potential Unleashed is a really insane card. It is kind of annoying to play against if you are, you know, playing against green, but again, I really don't think this card deserves to be hit. Yes, it's a straight up better Nimbus. In some cases, though, it's actually not the best. Like, if you're at 2 life or 3 life, facing down your opponent's triple striker or double striker, this card's not going to help you in any scenario. This card is going to be activated, and cool, my triple strike, double strike is still going through. If you don't have a hard negate there, you're going to be in trouble, right? And again, I just point to the same facts. We're not seeing green do a whole lot right now, so I don't think Dormant Potential Unleash needs to be addressed. Master Roshi Kamehameha Origins, though, for me personally, is a bit of a different story. I think if Dormant was to be addressed, or if Dormant needed to be addressed, I would say actually just ban or limit to one Master Roshi Kamehameha Origins. Only because I think when you draw multiple copies of Roshi and multiple copies of Dormant Potential Unleashed, that's when things can get a little bit more obnoxious. I would just say ban or limit Roshi Kamehameha Origins and put it on the green player to draw as many copies of Dormant as they need to win the game. If they draw all four, good for them. If they draw, 4 plus the 1 Roshi, if it were limited to 1, good for them. Odds are it's probably not going to happen. And a lot of people don't like limiting cards to 1 in this game or in card games in general. But I don't know. For me, actually, Roshi is actually a very good example of a one of, because in most green decks, like if you're able to play the 1 Roshi, you'll probably play it, right? Assuming it doesn't get errated to ultimate, which would never happen. I've always been an advocate of taking cards that are limited to 1, like Cold Bloodlust, and putting ultimate on them, but that's probably not going to happen. So basically my point is, if Roshi was limited to 1, I think most green decks would play it, because of course you're going to play your 4 Dormants, you're going to play maybe Shocking Death Ball, maybe Cell's Kamehameha, and I think you would pretty much always just slam the 1 Roshi, because if you draw it, it's great. It's really good. Gets you Dormant back, gets you Cell's Kamehameha back, gives you more pushing power. If you don't see it, it doesn't really matter. So I think that's a really good example of a one of in a card game. But anyways, just my thoughts. I don't think either of those things need to happen. I don't think Roshi needs to go. I don't think Dormant needs to go. Green just not doing enough right now. Heartfelt Plea. This card is doing quite a lot in the current format. Dark Broly is definitely one of the top decks, and it's abusing Heartfelt Plea to a very, very high degree. Basically, when set 12 came out, Dark Broly, which was already a strong deck, got even stronger because they got a red Dark Broly you could play for either 1 or 2 energy, depending on what kind of combo you use to get it into play. And then you awaken, you sacrifice that 30k Dark Broly, you play S4 Goku Heartfelt Plea. It's quite strong. One of the reasons this card is almost on the chopping block is because it's also going to be playable in a set 13 deck, the Bardock's Crew red deck, right? Essentially what they have there is a 1-drop Goku that becomes 25k if you're, I believe if you're at 3 or more energy, it might be your opponent. It's either you or your opponent being at 3 or more energy. So basically you play that guy, he draws a card, you attack with him, you awaken your leader, play Heartfelt Plea, do all that good stuff, right? So personally, I think Plea is potentially on the chopping block, but I don't think it's quite guaranteed, and I'll explain why. So at least in terms of the Bardock's Crew, the red Bardock deck, a lot of times that I've tested and seen that deck be played, you're awakening on turn 2. I mean, you're flooding a board super easily, and the leader gets to awaken when you flood your board, and that generally happens by turn 2. So being able to awaken turn 2 means you don't really get to use that 1-drop Goku and boost it to 25k very often. So Heartfelt Plea is just not very consistent in the deck. It's still going to be a main deck staple in Dark Broly, 110%. I definitely don't think that's going to change. But I think there's actually another way you can kind of deal with Dark Broly and how powerful Dark Broly is and not have to ban Heartfelt Plea. I will talk about that a little bit later. And yes, Dark Broly is actually seeing less representation over the past few weeks. I think that the red decks are kind of pushing out Dark Broly because Violent Rays is now a 4-3 of staple in most red decks. So that does give Dark Broly a hard time, but think about it this way. If something happens where red gets pushed out, like let's just say, for example, blue or yellow or green, they, these new cards come out that basically say, okay, we destroy red now. Let's just say that happens. That means Dormant will now become much less popular. And a deck like Dark Broly, which, no one's really disputing, it does a very broken thing playing free 30k battle cards. Dark Broly comes back to the meta, and now all of a sudden, red's not there to check Dark Broly anymore. So I do think that Dark Broly could use a good limitation. I personally don't think Heartfelt Plea is the way to go. I don't think you need to ban Heartfelt Plea, but I would not be surprised if Bandai did ban it because of the Dark Broly interaction and because of the possible playability in Bardock's Crew. But regardless, I think you could actually errata Heartfelt Plea to say you can only play this if your leader's red or yellow. They have errated Plea once already to make sure that the effect text works properly. So I don't think errating it again would be too big of a deal. I don't think they need to ban it, but I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they did. But let's move on. Then we got Dark Power Black Mass Saiyan. This is a card that many people find annoying, but honestly, I really don't think it's played all that much in the meta. Like, some Dark Broly decks main it, some Vedex decks main it, but Vedex is not all that popular like it used to be. This deck does give many strategies a tough time, and it is relatively annoying for those strategies, but I've said it before, I think this card's actually pretty well designed. Doesn't have barrier, doesn't have deflect, doesn't have really any protection. If you play anything at -5s or pops anything, whatever it could be, 1 or less, 2 or less, 3 or less, basically most things in the game that kill cards kill Dark Power Black Mass Saiyan. So I don't think it's all that annoying. I mean, it really did, you know, this card does affect pretty much every deck that came out in set 12, and it even affects a lot of decks coming out in set 13, but this wasn't really a problem card in set 12. I will say, for a deck like Red Bardock's Crew, it's a little bit tougher to answer this card than it is for, like, King Piccolo, for instance, but I think that that's Dark Power Black Bat Sand doing its job and checking these really fast, stormy, degenerate aggro decks. Personally, I think it's fine. I don't think they should ban it, and I don't think they will, but only time will tell. Then we got Universe 9 Assemble. This is one of the cards that makes Mecha Frieza obscenely broken. I have seen some people calling for this to be banned. Even some of my teammates have talked about it and how good or bad that might be for the deck. Personally, I think if you ban this card, I think you absolutely kill Mecha Frieza. I know that the power of the Super Saiyan card coming out in set 13 is obscenely powerful in the deck. It's actually really, really dumb how good that card is in the deck. Should the deck have that card and Unite Assemble? I think for a trial run, I think if it proves that Mecha is just way too good, then we look at something here, whether it's Unite Assemble or Power of a Super Saiyan. Honestly, I would say Power of a Super Saiyan might be the stupider card, but even in that case, like, Unite Assemble does make your opponent play very off if you're playing Mecha. Like, your opponent can't really play efficiently because if they tap out, they just give their opponent so much pluses by using Unite Assemble, if that makes sense, right? So I think if you limit this card or ban it, I think Mecha Frieza really falls down several tiers, but at the same time, keeping it in the game might be a little bit overpowered if Mecha just proves to be super strong with this and Power of a Super Saiyan. My only gripe with banning this card is I think it's a really good budget alternative to Saiyan Instinct Son Goku, and I'm sure that card will be reprinted again at some point down the line, so maybe that's a moot point, but I don't know. I'm kind of conflicted on this one. Let me know in the comments below what you think about banning Unite Assemble. Then we come to the Dark Broly leader. So I don't think anyone's really asking for the leader to be banned. I don't think the leader needs to be banned. I would actually personally like if this leader was errated, and here's what my errata would say. You can only include black battle cards, not counting extra cards, not limiting any types of battle cards, but you can only play black battle cards in your deck. Almost like the Vegex text, but not even allowing you to play Champa in your deck. This is why, right? So I think if you limit Dark Broly to the sense that it can't play Champa and it can't play Heartfelt Plea, and you still be able to play your 7-drop, right? Because your 7-drop still counts as a black battle card. That's in the effect text of the 7-drop. So I think if you did that type of limitation to Dark Broly, if like what I said before, if red was ever to be pushed out of the meta and then Violent Rays was no longer there to check Dark Broly, the deck would be much more fair, because if you're playing free 30k battle cards, right, I really don't think it's too fair to allow them to make that a 40k double strike for 1 energy. That's just a little bit too far out of left field, if that makes sense. I think that's just a little bit too strong, 0 cost 30ks with Champa, and obviously limiting the deck from playing Heartfelt Plea, you would stop these Awaken turns where Dark Broly gets, you know, 14 card hands, or Dark Broly awakens and crits to the opponent's life for almost virtually no cost, right? So I think that'd be a pretty good move in terms of eradicating Dark Broly. Do I think they're going to do it? Probably not, but I think it would be a good call if they did, personally. And then just some cards that are on the ban list. People are asking for them to come off. Bardock the Progenitor. I really don't think this card should come back, especially now this turn 2, turn 3 Victory Strike conversation. I mean, I don't think the deck is super scary, but I mean, with those types of degenerate decks like Super Shenron Victory Strike back in the day, if you have a 1 energy way to pull a life, which is essentially drawing a card, but also turns on your super combos and does other things for you, like in Cell Surge, for instance, turns on your surge effects, and it protects itself. So unlike Scrambling Saw Goten, where you have to attack with it to look at top 3 and add a card, where Goten can then very easily die in the following turn, Bardock just protects itself by adding it back to the hand. So personally, I think Bardock should stay on the ban list. I kind of thought they would have pulled it off on the set 12 ban list. Maybe this helps sell Evolution Booster because they did, you know, support Goku's lineage, and maybe they'll take it off on the set 13 ban list to do the same thing, even though it's kind of retroactively at that point because Evo Booster will have already been out for a few months. But regardless, I think this card should stay banned. Let me know in the comments below if you agree or disagree. Finally, I'm going to talk about Growing Evil Lifeform Cell. This card's at 1 currently in the Dragon Ball Super ban list. Nobody plays it. There are some cheesy ways to search it, even like dump it from your deck and add it back to your hand from the drop area. But again, no one plays it. It's susceptible to pretty much every counterplay in the game. Personally, I think leave it at 1 or just ban it outright. I mean, at this point, they don't have to ban it, but I wouldn't really bring it back because that just kind of promotes the same playstyle as Gogeta 7. And if you guys remember the ban list where they actually banned Gogeta 7, they did mention they want to avoid having boss monsters and cards like this that essentially just, you know, automatically win the game when they're played. Yes, Evil Lifeform Cell is much easier to play around than Gogeta 7 was or ever will be, but I just think we don't need to bring this card back into the game. That's just me personally. But anyways, guys, that's going to wrap up today's video. I do hope you enjoyed the discussion today. Leave a comment down below with your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.